Hope you had a fantastic weekend. So we're going to talk about electronic arcs going private. Then we're going to go into, or actually, first we're going to start with ChatGPT has this new checkout feature, which is cool. And then we're going to go into electronics arcs going private. And then Aman Verji, who is the former CFO of PayPal, is now working at Practical Ventures, and he's going to join us to talk about OpenAI secondary rounds, the TikTok deal, interest rates, and other cool stuff. So thank you all for joining. Happy to have you here, and we'll kind of go from there.
What's
So,
the deal with this OpenAI Etsy checkout thing?
ooh, it's cool. Let me show you real quick. So OpenAI now with this little plugin. Oh, interesting. So with this plugin, it allows you to buy things in ChatGPT. So I think that's really neat. So let's
Hmm.
go into here real quick. So Byte and ChatGPT, instant checkout, and the agentic commerce protocol. We're taking the first steps towards agentic commerce in ChatGPT with new ways for people and AI agents and businesses to shop together. So this person right here looking for something, they can buy it inside ChatGPT, and they can pay via Etsy. So that's pretty cool.
Interesting. So,
Yeah,
are you inside ChatGPT while
there's
while you're shopping and buying?
yeah, you can just basically say, okay, help me find a great housewarming gift for my friend, maybe a handmade ceramic dinnerware. Okay, and then it connects
Interesting.
to Shopify stores, and there you go.
How is Etsy doing, by the way?
Well, I just know that because of this announcement, their stock is up 13%.
Yeah. But I
So
mean,
over,
were they doing well before this or having trouble?
let's take a look.
This doesn't seem like the kind of deal that a strong company would take.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you look at 5 years, I mean, during the COVID boom, they were, around 290 a share. Now they're back at 73. So
Hmm.
yeah, we mean a strong company. You think they should have made their own or something, made their own platform people to use, or
Well, most companies want to control the user experience, right?
yeah.
And to sort of say, well, the customer will be inside of ChatGPT, and they'll use the conversational style to find what they want and say they want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, Etsy will get to actually do the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's not much. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole point of your user experience is that it's better than what other companies would offer you,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And now you're the same as every other company if we're all inside of a chat interface.
It's like they're disintermediating
They are
themselves.
being disintermediated. Yes.
Yeah, I think they're thinking like, okay, well, they have 700 million weekly active users here. They kind of control. They have the power in this relationship and the dynamics. I guess we could decide to turn them down, but if we do, then the competitors are going to probably
Yeah,
take
they'll
that
go with someone
opportunity.
else.
Yeah. So
But usually with these sorts of deals where there's like a clear, you're giving something up to be in the deal,
hmm
it's the weaker competitors that take it first,
hmm
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
Amazon's not going to take a deal like that.
No, that's like giving away the keys to the castle. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be begrudgingly that if they ever do anything like that, they want you to use their Rufus LLM to see if that
That's
works.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
They want you to talk to Rufus. Have you
right.
tried Rufus?
Oh, once or twice it was okay, but
Wow, I
like
haven't tried it.
nothing that I'm still used to just being on mobile and just typing in by
When was
keyboard
the
what I
last
want.
time you used Siri?
Oh, I don't even have an iPhone, so
What
never.
about Google? Was it Google Home? What do they call
I
their
I
system?
use Google Home only for just intercom system with Gary, but
I
that's
see.
about it.
I see. A
Yeah.
subsidized intercom,
It
basically.
pretty much that was my use case. It was like bust down walls and wire something, or buy these hockey pucks for $30. I was like, I'll go with the hockey pucks.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, another reason why I think this is a weak position to be in is you're in a conversation and you say you're looking for something. Initially, it's going to look for it on Etsy.
mm,
But let's say down the road, there's many partners that are using this system.
hmm
It's going to look across a whole bunch of places and pick out the one it thinks is best for you.
yeah, it's gonna give these people price. It's gonna kind of be like Google Shopping, but inside ChatGPT, you get price comparison on all these different SKUs, and then you pick which one's best. But then it does most of the work for you.
Right. And then those e-commerce sites are completely, as you said, disintermediated. Man, who came up with that word?
Yeah, I know it's terrible. Airbnb is gonna it's going to fight that tooth and nail, but that there eventually will bend the knee if
all
VBO or whatnot
all
goes
the
with it.
airline websites, all the hotel websites, all the rental car websites, they're all
Mhm.
going to fight it, and they're all going to fall.
Right, because originally what they did was they fought all the airplanes and said, "Hey, we're going to figure out a way of getting your flights on our website so the user can see all the prices and comparisons and shop." And they're like, "Okay, that's great. It's never gonna change. This is our business." And then ChatGPT's like, "Yoink! No, you don't. We
Well, in
got you."
between was Google Flights and
Mhm.
Booking.com, right?
Right. Yeah,
I mean, the
definitely.
aggregators are already kind of in their face
Yeah.
because
Also,
customers would much rather search across all the potential options.
exactly. That's what we want. So yeah, let's go to the rest of this real quick. So when someone asks shopping questions, best running shoes under $100 or gifts for a ceramics lover, ChatGPT shows the most relevant products from across the web. Product supports instant checkout. Users can tap buy, confirm their order, shipping and payment details, and complete the purchase without ever leaving the chat. Existing ChatGPT subscribers can pay with their card on file or other card and expense payment options. Orders, payments, and fulfillment are handled by the merchant using their existing systems. ChatGPT simply acts as user's AI agent, securely passing information between user and merchant, just like a digital personal shopper would. Merchants pay a small fee, a small fee. They pay a small fee on completed purchases. The service is free for our users. Doesn't affect their prices. It doesn't
That's
influence
right.
ChatGPT's products. And
And
if
how
you
much of that fee is for a given merchant in no way influences where ChatGPT sends the customer.
Of course not. There's no bidding mechanism in the back end. I'll pay a little bit more to get that order flow. No, no, no. They're honorable, and that's why they showed on ChatGPT's financial projections for the next couple of years this big segment on monetization of free users, and I think this is where we're going to get a lot of that
Mm.
from. Instant checkout items are not preferred in product results. Also, here's another thing I just thought in my mind. Remember back in the day on the internet when you had to enter your credit card into everyone's different website portal and you want to blow your brains out? And then Amazon was like, buy once button. You're like, oh. And now when someone says, go to my website, enter your credit card, I'm like, geez, this is terrible. Except for patreon.com/SVIC. You should enter
Mm.
your credit card in that because you become a supporter. Then you get the ability to then ask for Awan Verji and all of our guests questions. Only people who pay money or support us can actually ask questions of our interview guests. But for the beginning of our show, you can ask us questions. But if you want to ask the best questions, I mean, Joe's the
How
best
long
then.
do you think it'll be before the first brokerage is integrated with ChatGPT?
Oh, I bet Robinhood's like, can you make it so people can trade shitty options, lose all their money inside of ChatGPT? And Sam Altman's like, sure, for a fee, I can do that. So that's gonna be great. But then, I mean, then Robinhood's like, Jesus, now people just are doing their trades through ChatGPT and they're pulling in what they want and they're not going to our app as much. That would be a nice little
I mean,
knife
you'd
into the
make so
chest.
many traders so happy if they could just sit in ChatGPT and bark out random questions and get charts and graphs and make trades.
Remember the days where you had to go to Excel and take an Excel class, read a book, and learning all the different like functions? And then
Hmm.
now we're on the verge of like, I don't even know what those functions are, but this is what I want to do. And then the computer's like, I got you, dog. I'll take care of it for you. I'm
Yeah.
like, swell. That's the way it should be. So, also, if anyone's listening, has anyone ever used an Elgato Stream Deck and set up a virtual like mic to merge your mic with Elgato Stream Deck? If you had, email me at info@svinvestors.com because I
Are
need
you
some
trying
help
to
setting
get
one up.
tech support?
Yes, I'm trying to get free help and volunteers here. We have zero
I
budget.
see. I
Okay,
see.
instant checkout items are not preferred in product results when ranking multiple merchants that sell the same product. ChatGPT considers factors like availability, price, quality, whether a
You're
merchant is the
killing
primary
me.
seller. Wait, what? What?
Are you reading the marketing copy?
Yeah,
Who
it's fun.
cares?
Okay, but
What do you know
they
about this other ChatGPT feature? The one that I think it's called Pulse, the one that
oh yeah,
uh,
I started using that. I think it's pretty cool. I started playing with it, and you basically can just kind of tell it what your interests are, and it ties to our idea of having an always on LLM that's searching for updates on things that you've searched for before, and that's
mhm.
what they're getting to. And so we had the Hux team on before, and great team. I think they're doing great work. And then Pulse comes out, which is kind of a Hux competitor. So
Mm.
it's a kind of a race right now where Hux is focusing more on audio, allowing you to get everything in audio. Where right now ChatGPT is just ChatGPT Pulse is mostly focusing on text, but I'm sure they're going to make the jump to audio because it's
I
just like
mean, this is such an interesting time because they'd love to get you to connect your email account and your calendar and a bunch of other stuff
mhm,
because they can make such great use of it.
yep,
And they just need one killer feature that convinces people to spend the time to do all those connections.
yeah. And the thing is, the connections though. When you see duals connection, you're saying the user, or are you saying the developer?
The
Because
user, like for
it's
the user
super
to
easy.
say, I'm willing to let
Yeah.
OpenAI have access to my email and my calendar.
No, it's great because it's and also like, when you give it access, it's like one click, and it's just so simple, and it's just really easy to use on the consumer side. So I guess it's a trust factor for some people who've been listening to Tristan Harris and the hard fork idiots, and saying like, oh, they're just gonna steal all your data, and they don't know how to protect you like Google. When it's like 25% of the people working at OpenAI are from Google, so it's the same data and privacy protections. So I immediately, when I saw, oh, you can connect your Google Calendar, I was like, accept, and Gmail, accept, Drive, accept. Like it was not even a second thought. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, people in the EU are drafting a new round of privacy
Yeah,
legislation,
it's all crap.
and
You
Jordan's like, accept, accept,
exactly.
accept.
Dude, I was talking to one of my boys, really good friend, known him for like 7 years, and he insists that on our WhatsApp that we do disappearing messages. He's like, "Yeah, because, they could break through the encryption, and then they could somehow use this to, like, blackmail us or something." I'm like, "Bro, time out. If I'm a hacker, I'm not going after 2 freaking little schmucks like us. I'm going after freaking Slack, the boys from Slack, and I'm also going for larger companies so I can get that sweet, sweet ransom money for the tens of millions of dollars." Like, if someone hacked me, I'd just be like, "Great, like, have at it because you're not gonna get any fucking money from me."
Isn't that
But
what happened to Bezos?
I think so, yeah, they tried to blackmail him with him showing pictures of him in his boxer shorts, trying to mac on his new wife while he was already married. Freaking what a cuck. Um, and so you got that going on, but then also I wanna
Man,
talk
you
about this.
mangled that story.
Oh, I mangle that
Well done.
story. Thank you, but it was true. He was cheating on Mackenzie Bezos, who was fantastic, good, really good and super
You
smart,
don't
helped
think
build the
they had an
business.
arrangement?
I don't know.
I don't
What
think the
was
cheating was the problem. I think the problem was he was supposed to keep it quiet.
well, what happened is he sent the pictures to her, and then she decided to send the pictures to her brother, who then, sent him to the National Enquirer for a couple $100,000 or something.
Mhm.
So it's like her for not being able to keep her mouth shut, and then here you go. But just just the lessons for everyone here: never take a picture of yourself in your boxers or freaking naked or something and give it to anyone. There's no good reason to do that unless you're on OnlyFans and you're making hundreds of millions of dollars. Another thing I want to bring up is there's kind of this weird endowment effect for data. Endowment effect, from my understanding, is basically, okay,
Mhm.
this cell phone is $5 if Joe owns it, but if I own it, it's now worth $1,000. And everyone thinks like their old ledgers
Especially
and
if you had to put energy into configuring it,
exactly. And so
like
people think,
IKEA furniture.
yeah, people think like, oh, this ledger of worthless information is worth so much money, so ChatGPT should pay me money to access it. Like the
Even
all
when
in
they do
pod,
a terrible job of assembling it and it's all crooked, they feel very proud about it.
hey, it's sturdy. I mean, just don't look at it the wrong way or it'll collapse. But it's holding right now. Just don't turn the AC on too high. God, but I remember the all in podcast when people are so excited about ChatGPT and reading our data. And you had the Mr. Science guy was like, oh, and what's going to happen eventually is ChatGPT is going to pay you to access your data. And I'm like, child, please. Did you not learn anything from Internet 1.0? Everyone tried to do that and it failed. That's not the way it's going to work. People are going to say, no, I get much more value of ChatGPT looking to my emails and
Yeah.
calendars and doing a remix of my
People are gonna
information.
say, "Shut up and take my account credentials."
Exactly. So yeah, man. Um, so yeah, I got that going on. And then let's go to the next thing. So Etsy pops 13%. So we mentioned that. Now let's go to EA real quick. Okay. Awesome. So Electronic Arts goes private for $55 billion, the largest leveraged buyout ever. Takeover marks a continuing push by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund into the video game industry. So EA said it would go private in a $55 billion deal with a group of investors, including Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, private equity firm Silver Lake, and Jared Kushner's investment firm Affinity Partners. The deal
Mhm.
represents the largest leveraged buyout of all time, eclipsing a record set in 2007. The record in 2007 was like some American utility. Electronic Arts published The Sims, football game Madden NFL, and FIFA, the soccer video game known as FC. It has been boosted by sales as marquee sports games, and it's expected to release Battlefield 6, the latest edition of its popular shooting game. The Journal reported last week the video game maker was in advanced talks to be taken private by 3 investment firms. The mega deal marks continued push by Saudi Arabia's PIF into the video game industry. The fund already has a 10% stake in EA in addition to a minority stake in Nintendo, and has acquired game company Scopely, and Niantic's video game division, which makes Pokemon Go. Now, what's interesting about Niantic is Google owned that for a period of time, and then we said, this ain't going anywhere, and we spun it out. And
Mhm.
then we also gave him a sweetheart deal saying, hey, this game you're working on, like, here's a deal on Google Cloud credits. and then they released Pokemon Go shortly after, and then our sales team tried to like knock, can we renegotiate that deal? Being you're making so much money now, and they were like, no, f off. So interesting to see that one happen. And then what else about this? So EA stockholders received $200 a share in cash and 25% premium EA share price at Thursday's close, the last day before the journal's report. The parties have been in discussions on and off for months before talks accelerated earlier this month. People familiar with the matter said. Bankers at JP Morgan Chase, which is providing $20 billion debt financing, received a call less than 2 weeks ago to get involved, some of the people said. So, yeah. So what's interesting is, they tried to do these leveraged buyouts with Toys R Us, where they threw back in 2006, like some major investment banks threw tons of debt on its books, which basically hamstringed the company from making any business decisions and kind of got screwed. Then they probably learned this one and said, hey, you know what we should do for this is just let's get the Saudis of very deep pockets, just give us a YOLO check for 20-30 billion dollars, and then we don't have to put as much debt on the books, because usually this debt is floating rate debt. So
I'd much rather have equity investors than a whole bunch of debt.
Exactly, gives you flexibility. And we're seeing it from OpenAI. It's like, hey,
it gives you really large partners who can pull strings.
That is true. Exactly. So now our interests are aligned, that you make sure this company doesn't go tits up. So yeah. Let's see here. So we got that story going on there. And EA in 2017 decided to take loot boxes to the next level and say, loot boxes used to be you give them $1 and they give you some like type of gear or something. And then what they did is say, no, we were not fleecing kids and adults enough. What we need to do is say, okay, you could grind out in this game and level up and get to this item here. Or you can just give us $20 now and get that item way before people, and you start murdering people and winning. And so there's a huge open arms revolt.
Got to bring in the whales.
Exactly. And so the executive, the CEO had to fall on the sword and say, I'm sorry, we never knew this was going to happen. This is bad. We'll never do it again. And of course, later on, they do something simpler again, because everyone just, they're trying to make as much money as possible.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see if this changes the culture of the company, or if they become even more
more
greedy.
mercenary.
Yeah, even more mercenary, because we saw the same thing happen to Blizzard. Blizzard was owned by Vivendi, and they still had a pretty good culture. They would ship things only when they were done. Vivendi allowed them to do that. And then once they went to Activision, the whole entire culture changed. So, well, yeah. Okay. So it looks like Mon is here early. So I'll let Amon in. Let's see here.
Hello there.
Hey, Amon, how you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. So,
how you doing?
Good. So Amon is partner at Practical Ventures, and he's joining us to talk about various topics, from what's going on with secondary sales to interest rates to what he's seeing going on in the startup ecosystem. So Amon, thank you for joining. He also talked to us about your podcast, because I have it in our description. So why don't you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, I can do any and all that. Where do you want? It's a treat to be here, by the way.
Oh yeah. First of all, plug your podcast real quick for like 15-20 seconds.
So we just started a new podcast. It is about 5 weeks in. It's called Trading Places. It is the primary VC podcast on secondary transactions. We might be the only podcast out there that focuses on secondary, which is where a lot of the activity is happening in venture right now. It's an active market. Stuff's happening. A lot of great companies are private, but early shareholders need liquidity. Early LPs need liquidity in funds that have been around for a long time. A secondary deal is where somebody comes in and just buys out those early shareholders. And if you're a secondary buyer like us, you can usually get a deal on these companies, discounts to where the last round was done, because sellers need liquidity. And so if you can negotiate a deal, give your investors a little bit of alpha by getting a good product at a discount, then great. And we've had a fund we're on fund 3 right now that we're raising for. So that's been the fundraising process has been going on for about the better part of a year for our second and third funds. But the podcast talks about all that stuff, about fundraising, about what deals are being done in secondary, exciting ways to think about in value companies, deal structures that are happening, and then just kind of riff on VC trends in general. And it's my colleague Dave McClure and myself, we do the podcast every week now.
Nice. So
is the fund just dedicated to secondaries?
It is mostly secondary. We'll vary into like the TikTok deal, or we'll look for There's an angle in there because ByteDance owns TikTok, or at least they used to, and we can talk more about what now is the case. But ByteDance is doing a secondary deal themselves at a 330 billion valuation. So we'd kind of break down ByteDance and say, hey, I think the business is worth that, just on the China business alone. If you believe there's any value in TikTok, that's gravy.
Yep.
And so now we start talking about TikTok and about the new deal and about pros and cons of what our kids are doing online. And then we kind of come back to secondary at the end. You know how that is. But that's basically the focus, the main, although not exclusive focus of the show.
Nice.
Nice. So OpenAI, everyone's talking about that secondary. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, we kind of were betwixt and between on that one. It was a $500 billion valuation, which puts it in some pretty rarefied territory, along with like Broadcom and the Mag 7. Like there's not that many companies out there that are worth that much. I guess on the positive side, if you look at their traction and their growth rates, you can't deny that they're having they're about a $12 billion run rate right now on ARR and revenue. And when numbers like that start getting thrown around at 2x or 3x every year, what Dave and I kind of settled on was, well, if that continues for the next 2 years, so to 2027, and they can get to about $40 to $50 billion in ARR run rate, like that seems like then you're at 10 times sales. Admittedly, it's 10 times 27 sales, and a lot has to go right between now and then. That's kind of what you're betting on, right? Yeah. So you begin to see where maybe there's if you believe in the technology and you believe that they can continue that progress, okay, I get it. I also just take a look at how many users they have, and there's something that they believe they're telling me they're at 800 million in active users right now. They could be at 1 billion by the end of the year. And if you look at what could you monetize 1 billion active users at conceivably, if you can get anywhere close to, a Meta or a Facebook or that kind of monetization, obviously $40 to $50 billion in revenue in a couple of years is very easy to believe. So given their user traction and their user growth and their ability to monetize, it feels like there's a case there. I still don't love their governance, and I don't love their, the fact it's a very competitive space, and there's so many LLMs in between Anthropic and some of the other smaller ones like Cohere. It's hard to tell who'll shake out at the top of that list. So I don't know that I'm a buyer at that level, but at least understand the business case and think there's something there if you really understand and believe that technology. Yeah. I don't know. What did you guys think? Do you have a view on it? Is it is it the market paying for 2 years of growth just too crazy, too much? Or do you think that's just there's a case there to be made?
The way I look at it as I still have it seared in my mind when Google went public at $80 a share in 2004, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's so expensive!" Meh. And then same thing for Facebook. "Oh my God, it's so expensive!" Blah. And there is so much more growth ahead of it. It had really solid margins. It was the dominant position. So I look at OpenAI right now. You're not going to get a return like you were when it was at 300 billion-ish, at 30 billion valuation, but at 500 billion, if it does, eventually continue to increase its sales, you might be looking back at this and saying, "Oh shit, I could have got this thing when it was at this price, when now it's worth maybe 750 billion or $1 trillion or something." But of course, they have to hit all their goals. And we just reacted to their new shopping feature where you can shop inside of ChatGPT. And if they can actually make that happen, now they could become one of the dominant companies in the retail space. So yeah.
You made a good point too. Yeah, the way you were describing the valuation was sort of on the consumer side. On the enterprise side or the pure LLM side, there's tons more competition. Whereas on the consumer side, there's just ChatGPT. Like nobody even talks about any other chat program. But on the LLM side, for corporations, you do hear people say, "Oh, I prefer, Claude for coding." There's at least some options there, and maybe there's some price sensitivity. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think that changes in the next couple of years? Does the field get more crowded with credible competitors that'll maybe change that equation?
On the consumer side, I think it's just like the other monopolies that Jordan was describing. It's just, winner take all.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the stack. It's, when Google completely fumbled the bag with LLMs when they could have released something in 2020. When ChatGPT came out, it was so great, and it took them about 7 or 8 months to get something out that was like on par with ChatGPT. They did Bard, but it doesn't count. I had already 8 months of data in there already. And then I was thinking to myself, well, 8 months of data, and now I might have to go jump into Gemini or something. I don't know if I want to do that. And now we're at next month, or this month's like October is like a 3-year anniversary of ChatGPT. Got 3 years of my data inside there. And every week or 2 weeks, they're releasing a new feature that gets the previous data and makes it better, like the ChatGPT Pulse, which looks at my previous data and looks for updates on the internet. So I'm continuously getting rewarded for staying in that stack. And I don't think most users are like, yeah, I want to go now play a game of putting some on Anthropic or some on top of Gemini. Whereas the enterprise side, of course, you're just, pulling in new LLMs. But then again, that's a simplification because each LLM acts differently under your internal evals. But I think originally I think people thought that when the AI play came out, they're going to try to redo the B2B SaaS enterprise playbook and say, okay, the future in AI is going to be all enterprise. But it's turned out the consumer side's been a little more stickier and actually a better market to be in, especially for ChatGPT.
Yeah. If you believe that, I think then this seems like a reasonable valuation. The analogy to Google is an interesting one. You're obviously cherry picking the ones that made it. The fact that you can look in retrospect and say, well, Google turned into this $4 trillion company, and had I been in at, I don't know, whatever, 80 billion or 20 billion, obviously that would have made my fund. But I'm old enough that I remember the second and third and fourth place finishers to Google. And at that time, I was at eBay at the time, and we were having a bake-off between Google and Yahoo as to who would power eBay search. I guess we concluded we couldn't do it ourselves because we weren't that smart. And so we decided, these Google guys and Yahoo, let's just bake them off and see who's better. And in a lot of the product-led searches, Yahoo did just fine. Google was better. The unstructured search, I think maybe we should have tipped our hat to Google, but for strategic reasons, we wanted to go with Yahoo because we didn't want to be the kingmaker, I guess, to make Google the clear number one. We wanted to at least have a counterweight to Google. And so maybe by 2004, 2005, the writing was clear. But back in 2001, there was like, Alta Vista and Yahoo and Ask Jeeves. And I think, I guess Microsoft, Bing. Like, if you had bet on any one of those guys, you would have lost your money. The right bet would have either been to suss out that Google is the winner, or bet on everybody, right? Like bet on all these guys in a basket. As a fund manager, I got to say, as a VC, I don't have to know who the winner is. I just bet the race, not the horse. Do you, by the way, know who the second place finisher so the greatest racehorse of all time was Secretariat, probably. Do you know who finished second to Secretariat in like 1973 in the Kentucky Derby?
No.
Of course you don't. It's sham, but no one knows that because like nobody remembers second place. So if God forbid you bet on the LLM that finishes second, 20 years from now, will they remember your name, or will you just have lost all your money? And I don't know. My angle is like, I think I just want to bet the race. I want to put a little bit of money down on Anthropic and OpenAI. I'm not sure about Google. That's a different thing. But, Cohere, find a couple of these, spread my bets across a few of these different things, let the market sort out the winner, and then maybe double down as you go. I think as a VC, that's what Dave and I have concluded. Is like, I'm not sure we're smart enough to pick the winner. So let's just bet that the horse race will continue and that there'll be, either multiple winners or that we'll catch the outlier as we go.
Are you spreading your bets around for the enterprise side or for the consumer side, or you don't distinguish?
We're doing it for both. We're doing it for both. I don't think we really distinguish right now in how the opportunities we're looking, how we're looking for those opportunities.
Because on the enterprise side, it seems like your strategy is perfect. It's like you can't predict who's going to win. Yeah. It might not be one company. Yeah. Spread your bets around and just buy the top, 5 or top 10 and hope the industry is a smashing success.
But do you think on the consumer side, you think it's a done deal?
I think on the consumer side, it's going to be like Kleenex. We're just going to, name, just like people would say, you Google it, right? When that happened, when people started saying, oh, I Googled it, you knew it was done. Yes. You're like, no one's going to Yahoo for a search anymore when people are saying that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I keep on always hearing it go, Google's coming with a new model, it's going to change everything. And they get an initial like bump in the stats because of marketing. But then you look at Gen AI traffic, OpenAI is still dominant with 80% share. So I really look at this as like ChatGPT's race to lose. And with NVIDIA coming in and saying, "Hey, we're going to give you $100 billion now, so you can continue doing your data center spread." I mean, it looks like they have more and more capital behind them to make them a credible threat to Google for some time. So, and I don't look at it as it's zero sum game of like it's going to either be Google or OpenAI wins. I think it's a growing market, but I think the days of talking about like OpenAI being crushed by Google are kind of long past.
After,
they got some
after the
significant
OpenAI deal, what other big secondary deals are you guys following?
So let's see. Well, just on the OpenAI deal, just to close that off, it was interesting. The tie-up with NVIDIA is I think great for them. It is interesting that NVIDIA is essentially using their market cap to issue stock, raise money into OpenAI in return for equity. What is OpenAI going to do with that money? A lot of that's going to come right back to NVIDIA, right, in sales. And so, and then NVIDIA is going to get a multiple on sales because of that.
Yep.
You'd think as an investor, you might have some pause about these deals. But you know what happened to NVIDIA stock on the day that they announced this deal with OpenAI on September 22nd?
$3 or $4?
It went up by 3.9%, which on a $4 trillion stock, if my math isn't off, it's about 160 billion market cap increase.
Yep.
So by announcing a $100 billion deal with OpenAI and investing that money, they generated 160 billion in increased market cap, which now they can turn around and reinvest in OpenAI, and then some of that's money going to come back over 3 to 5 years or whatever in revenue and sales. As long as investors are on board with this financial ledger domain, I guess you do that all day.
On
that's
board,
like
investors are beside themselves. I mean, to your point, you know, a bunch of companies have announced, like Oracle or Alibaba have said, "Oh, we're going to spend X dollars on some crazy AI expansion," and their stock immediately goes up by 6% or 10% or whatever.
Yeah, 2 months ago, Oracle was a $600 billion market cap company, and now they're at 800 billion in market cap, and they've made a certain TikTok and OpenAI. They've made they're a cloud vendor, but obviously they're getting into some some huge data center deals as well. And so you asked what other secondary deal. So that OpenAI was one big one we covered. ByteDance is another really interesting one. That's a $330 billion valuation, $340 billion valuation. That's a secondary offer. Really interesting company. I can kind of break down the basics of that business, but it's basically 2/3 of the revenue comes from China. My younger daughter takes Mandarin and she'll make fun of my pronunciation, but the business they have in mainland China is called Douyin. And it is basically like TikTok, but different features and, works a little bit differently.
More wholesome.
They've got more wholesome, I guess, whatever, maybe more wholesome, a little bit more educational. 750 million users are using it, and they're spending an average of 74 minutes per day on it, like 50% more than Facebook engagement. Wow. And so that business alone at a 3x multiple of revenues could alone be justify the entire value of ByteDance. ByteDance also has a few other apps in the Chinese ecosystem. They have the number one news app, kind of a curated news service. It's not just user-generated content, but they actually get it from journalists. Something America no longer produces is actual journalists. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, they have a good way of figuring out news and cutting through UGC. And then they've also got the number one AI app in China, and all that's under the ByteDance brand. And so that business looks like to me like that alone would justify the $300 and some billion valuation. And they've got TikTok, by the way, has 75% of the users, 80% of the users outside of the US. So there may be US regulatory risk with TikTok. But at the time we did the pod, it was like, hey, Dave, 80% of the users are outside the US. Some of those countries are maybe US aligned in terms of policies, like India also banned TikTok. Canada sort of like America. They don't want to admit it, but they are. But a lot of these countries like Russia and Latin America, and they have their own, agendas. And so there's real value in that international business, which is also good. And if you believe there's any value in TikTok at all, it's that $330 billion valuation. I don't even have to believe the US has any value to pay $330 for the business. I think whatever the US is worth is for free. And then lo and behold, and Dave was like, yeah, but they're going to ban it. And if they ban the business, isn't it worth zero? And I'm like, I don't know, man. My 14-year-old daughter thinks that Donald Trump has done only one thing well in his first 7 months. The only thing she likes about him is that he kept TikTok alive in the US.
Mhm.
And there are 180 million my daughters hanging out, like using TikTok, who would be pissed if the government took it away in an election year. So I don't think that business is going to zero, no matter what Congress says.
Yep.
And sure enough, last week they announced a deal which essentially says the Chinese government will take its ownership down from around 40% to 20%. I say Chinese government, I mean China and all its entities, which I know it's not all the government, but let's say Chinese ownership goes down to 20%. Silver Lake, Oracle, Susquehanna, who else is now increasing ownership? Altimeter, like a lot of U.S. institutional investors coming in to take more ownership. And then Oracle is, I guess, now anointed as the keeper of the data. I don't know how Larry Ellison's pulled this off. He's not a cybersecurity company. He's a cloud vendor, but somehow he's like in charge of all of our data privacy and security. So good for Oracle, I guess. And so maybe now there's a valuable business in there. And as a part of that deal, ByteDance gets, I think they got $14 billion in cash. They're getting 20% of ownership of the new U.S. entity. They're getting a license fee of 20% on any profits that come out of their algorithms. So there's, that win for them is at least, I think, worth 50 billion plus. And adding that to their China business, adding that to their U.S. business or the non-U.S. business, I thought their valuation as a secondary firm at 330 billion is really kind of a bargain. I mean, that's a company that does as much revenue as Facebook now, or Meta. Meta's a $2 trillion company almost. Yeah. This is a $400 billion company. I feel like that's, the market is giving them I think there's a big opportunity with ByteDance going forward. So we kind of like that deal too.
Yeah, it reminds me of Google with the legal cloud. Once antitrust was resolved, then all of a sudden we saw the stock rally. And so it feels like once this cloud goes over, then the stock's going to find a better valuation, or the secondary round, or what you call it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about TikTok. Also, what was interesting with TikTok is they licensed the rights of the algorithm to the U.S. company that's going to be taking over, so they can basically just like rewrite it and have U.S. engineers like monitor it. So it's it's like it's the same level of brain rot. Doesn't really change anything, but whatever. And then let's talk about interest rates. What are your thoughts on interest rates and where we're going?
Yeah.
And we have inflation that's still at 2.9%, and we're lowering interest rates. Like, you think it's a good move? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I just to recap what the Fed did. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Is they have been holding the Fed funds rate at between 4.25% and 4.5% for a while. I think over the summer you're right, they saw inflation somewhere in the high 2s, and it was sticky in the high 2s. It wasn't coming down to where they really want it, which is 2%. But it wasn't going up, and it felt like there was also a strong labor market. And so I think their conclusion was, well, with inflation elevated and with the labor market seems like it's doing well, we don't want to cut. We're just going to wait and see how this plays out. And then I think in July and August, a couple of things began to change, which kind of explains their decision. The first thing was the job numbers got restated lower. And they got restated lower for the last year. So the BLS came out and said, hey, we told you that the US over the last 12 months created, what was the number? Something like 2.5 million jobs. 1 million of those was actually wrong. We only created 1.5 million jobs. And so maybe the labor market is not as strong as you think it is, or we told you. So the number of jobs went down by about 1 million, or about 911,000 over the course of a year. And then July and August were really bad for job growth. Like the number of jobs we have to be creating as a country is something like 200,000 a month just to keep everyone gainfully employed. We're not even half that. We're maybe, a third of that. And a lot of those jobs are in like government sectors and government supported sectors. So now it feels like there's a real softness in the jobs picture. And so I think this tip between, hey, the story that the labor market is strong and doing well, that's not so right anymore. There's a real potential weakness there. And so as long as inflation is not going up, that's a better case for rate cuts. I don't personally love this trade-off that the Fed tries to strike between, hey, employment and inflation. It's always a seesaw. And if I cut rates, I'm trying to make one side happy and not the other. It's this old Keynesian dynamic that I've never felt great about.
I'm more of a free market. Questioning the dual mandate
Yeah, I am kind of. I think the one mandate ought to be price stability and stop with the job creation. I only say that because I just don't think there's much the Fed can do about creating jobs. If there's a demand side problem, like hey, the economy is going through a recession and people don't want to borrow, and so banks are failing. Okay, cutting interest rates to help out banks and stimulate the economy, I get. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is the unemployment rate's super low. It's like 4.2, 4.3. When I was back in the 1980s and 90s, nobody thought that was a bad economy. And the structural unemployment rate was 5.5 or 6%. So we're way below that now. And yet we still seem to think there's a lot of people who are looking for work, can't find their jobs they need. We're worried about the white collar folks, worried about kids getting jobs. But that's not a demand side issue. That's not because interest rates are too high. I think that's because the skills we need to perform in this economy aren't exactly what the economy needs. Like I'm watching what my kids study in school, and I'm watching what AI is doing to the workforce, and I'm thinking these kids have to be really well prepared to accommodate a life that's going to have automation and computers doing a lot of the work that gets done by people today. We do have an underemployment problem. I think there are a lot of people who are unemployed who should be employed. But to me, that's more about supply side stuff. It's like skills in the right, in the right sectors. You need these skills to perform. You shouldn't be studying these subjects. This is all wrong for you. We probably have way too many people majoring in like history and the arts. And we're importing math majors and computer science majors from China and India. That should tell us something, that there's a mismatch in skills. And I wouldn't tell the Fed, hey, if you cut interest rates, all of a sudden, all these kids who graduated from this 4-year college in debt, majoring in history, they'll get a job. Like, no, it's not an interest rate problem. That's a whole different problem. Don't try to solve that problem. So I'm worried about cutting interest rates too much. And I kind of applaud the Fed for having been on the sidelines for this long. I think recently we're seeing though, like the 10-year getting down to 4%, and we're seeing the free market take interest rates on the long end down into the low fours. And that tells me that there is the supply and demand of loanable funds tells you that you should be somewhere in the low fours. If you're holding the short end of the curve way above the long end of the curve for a long time, that just feels like you're a little bit out of step with where the market is. So I think a prudent 25 basis point cut is okay. I think we'll probably do it again in the fall with another 25 basis point cut, and see where it is. And then I think the inflation rate probably does keep coming down, but I think it's going to be slow going. I think that's just a function of, are they tight on the money supply? They're still in quantitative tightening, which means that they're still letting their balance sheet roll off. They're not printing money like crazy. They're taking a slow, disciplined approach and bringing the money supply growth back to where it should be. But I'd expect inflation to be continuing to be tame and to slide down bit by bit. Housing prices, by the way, look like they're falling for the first time in the last, 10 years. Yep. And the way that CPI is calculated, there's a lead indicator for housing, but it takes a year to build into the CPI. So I think the next 6 or 12 months, we'll see CPI coming down just because of the way they do housing as a weighting, and how they do what they call owner equivalent rent. It's kind of a weird methodological thing, but the bottom line is there'll be downward pressure on the CPI for a while. So I think it's an okay move, but I do actually applaud them for being tighter longer than they otherwise could have been.
Do you think there's any chance that they're going to revalue the gold that the Treasury is sitting on?
I don't know. Like, how would they revalue it? Like, what's the?
I mean, they quote the price at where gold was, I think, 2 years ago, roughly.
And, interesting.
And if they did revalue it, then all of a sudden they would be sort of manufacturing a huge amount of money on their behalf.
I haven't actually thought about that angle.
I should look into it,
but it seems like
the largest collection of gold in the world, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And so by revaluing higher, you're saying they'd have more assets and create money in the economy?
Yeah, because the Treasury sits on the gold, but the Fed has the certificates for ownership, right?
Yeah.
It's like this weird handshake they've got going on. And if you suddenly said all that gold we're sitting on is worth twice as much, you could do something with that extra money if you wanted to.
I suppose. I guess I would just quibble with the last part of what you said, which is I don't think they should be printing more money, because I think they should be monitoring the monetary aggregates. The most predictive one, I think, has been the M2 monetary aggregate, which is stuff like it's cash in circulation and it's like demand deposits and checking account deposits, but it's not gold. Like the amount of gold in the world or Bitcoin, I would just say don't let that affect your judgment. Keep a firm hand on the M2 money supply and what's in the banks. If you see that begin to drop, okay, that's a problem. But if that goes up too much, and especially if you use some weird justification like, well, the price of gold is higher, therefore, like, wait a second, if you start printing more money, that's just going to lead to more inflation, which is then going to that's going to trigger a spiral. So I think where they're at right now is they've actually been pretty disciplined in keeping a firm hand on the M2 money supply. It's interesting that doesn't get nearly as much press as like a 25 basis point move in the interest rate, which frankly between us, no one cares about a 25 basis point move in the rates. Like that's noise. But the money supply really matters. But the press underreports the money supply and what that's doing, and just tends to overstress on what Jerome Powell said in the third paragraph of his statement when they held interest rates steady, but change the language. And this word maybe means that the tips of risks and balances and the oracle of Delphi came down to prognosticate that you should fight the war against the Persians. Like, shut up. He's not that smart. He's not an oracle. He used two words out of order, for the first time in 6 months. But at the end of the day, like really watch the M2 money supply. That to me is the big tell. And what are they doing? Not what are they saying?
Gotcha. Now, in the going to startups, I saw like we've gotten some recent IPOs that are in the works and whatnot. It seems like the window is back open again. Any thoughts on IPOs? We're going to see more as time goes on, or is this kind of like just a cyclical blip that's going to go away?
No, it feels like it's real. Finally, it feels like this IPO reopening we've been projecting that's been right around the corner for 2 years is kind of coming out. I think we saw, the good news is I think we saw a variety of companies across different categories. Some of them have been like really, really big, good companies. Like Figma was a blowout of an IPO, but it's a SaaS company with a very high recurring revenue, quasi-profitable or profitable business. It actually comps well with Canva, which is one of our big portfolio companies. So we love this. But I thought that's a company that, it's growing at 50% a year, trading at a 25x multiple. That's positive. But then you had other like not so great companies, much smaller. StubHub, like an e-commerce company. Tickets and e-commerce is a tricky category. They went out and they did fine. $6, $7, $8 billion market cap. Traded up, tried to trade it down a little bit. It wasn't great, but they got out, and that's positive. There were some earlier ones in the year like Circle. Fintech has been very hot, and so I guess that's positive. But now we're seeing SaaS, we're seeing e-commerce, we're seeing some fintech companies. We're basically seeing different categories participating, which I think is good. We're finally seeing companies begin to go public below $1 billion in revenue. Like all of a sudden, the bar seemed to have gone really high for IPOs for the last year or so. But now the last couple of IPOs have been even south of 500 million in revenue. So I think that's a positive sign. It feels like we're almost back to normal here in the fourth quarter.
Are you guys doing anything on the stable coins or other crypto ventures?
We haven't done much, and some of the valuations, I think for stable coins, Tether and Circle, I guess, are the two biggest players in the space. I do like the category. I don't know that the category needs a lot more than 2 or 3, major players. So I guess if you're in one of those, great. And even then, I don't really understand why a stable coin issuer should be worth, like Tether's talking about a $500 billion valuation, which would put it in OpenAI territory. I get stablecoin. I guess I know why you need it, or I guess why it's a good idea to have stablecoin. If you want to issue me a digital currency that is backed by the US dollar, that sounds smart, but that doesn't sound like the kind of technology that is going to, command a $500 billion valuation. That should be something a lot of people do. It should be competitive. It should be like, I get to choose among, stablecoin providers. Like, how many of these do we need? And why are you charging such a premium and a markup? And like, it just seems odd that there'd be a lot of value in that part of the stack to me. So we're not doing much there. We haven't done much in terms of crypto. Blockchain, yes. One of the deals we did was actually one called QuickNode, which is a blockchain API company that enables a lot of these other crypto exchanges and providers to connect and to transact in a very seamless way. I think blockchain is a life-changing technology. That is definitely a winner, and there'll be lots of blockchain winners. That I think we would do. I'm not so sure on the crypto specific category.
What about all the treasury companies? Like MicroStrategy, Bitminer, et cetera. It seems like there's a treasury company or two for every cryptocurrency.
I don't know what to make of that one. Like MicroStrategy is, their market cap is just way higher than the book value, the value of the stuff they're holding. So why is that? I don't honestly know. There are some inefficiencies I can understand. I guess there's a couple of possibilities. One is people cannot invest into Bitcoin, but for whatever reason, legal, regulatory, my corporate charter doesn't let me buy Bitcoin, but I can invest in MicroStrategy, which is a USC corporation, and then Michael Saylor can invest in Bitcoin. So I'm getting around my. If I can't pay you, but I pay Jordan to pay you, like, hey, I'm good. I get the upside of the benefit, and somehow my shareholders are happy. That doesn't seem like this a strong basis long term for a business model, especially when the current administration is making it easier to own Bitcoin. Like, I don't think you need these middlemen who can do the markups. I guess the other argument that maybe makes sense is Michael Saylor somehow is a genius, and just by him investing in Bitcoin, he can stake, he can leverage, he can do things that I can't do. I'm going to trust him to outperform Bitcoin, and so by investing in his company, I'm going to outperform Bitcoin. Okay, fair enough. Now you're putting a lot. Now you're buying Michael Saylor and Bitcoin. That Venn diagram is value creating, and I just don't know that I don't know that's true that Michael Saylor is value added, but I don't know how many Michael Saylors there are. So I'm a little skeptical of this.
I thought the argument was that if central banks wanted to start owning crypto, and they were worried about moving the market by accumulating positions, they could instead just go buy one of these treasury companies.
Okay. And then the treasury company trades in line with book value, or a little bit north. There's some premium.
Yeah, I don't know why it would trade that much above book value, even on this theory.
Right. Exactly. I accept that there maybe are different vehicles by which you can access this interesting asset class. I just don't know why they would get a premium over the value of the asset class. In my mind, it ought to be like, hey, you should trade at book value. Okay. When you're back to book value, let's talk. If you're below book value, I'm interested. If you're above book value, even Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway trades at a 1.2x book value or something. Like, if Warren Buffett gets a 1.2x, I'm not paying you 2x book value, 3x, but get out of here. I'll pay you 1.1 or 1.2. Like, easier.
Chad, please.
But you can't be.
Yeah, let's get to our premium supporters get to ask our interviewers questions, and so Damien had a point that I think ties to one of your LinkedIn posts on labor force participation. So let me pop this up real quick. Damien says, I think those unemployment numbers are underreported. The gig economy is keeping a lot of people from being able to file for unemployment. And then I saw that you have this post here about labor force participation and how it's just been crawling down over time. What do you think's going on here? Is anything here related to what Damien's mentioning? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. Let's talk about what's happening first, and I'll come back to the question. I think this is more of a statement than a question, but it's a good one. So here's the fact. This is just men 25 to 54. So just forget about like the youth. Forget about young people. Young people have a lot of things going on. They're staying in school longer, for instance. They don't want to work as hard. Let's put that aside. But they're definitely staying in school longer, and so they're not working like they did at one time. Let's set aside people 55 and over. They're much more likely to be in retirement than people who are 25 to 54. And then let's set aside women, because women have kids. So that also complicates things. Let's just look at men between the age of 25 and 54. In the 1950s, 97% of those men were in the labor force. Like, they had a job or were looking for a job. Now we're down to 89%. And that's kind of causing the entire labor force participation rate across the economy to fall. But it's principally men 25 to 54, a lot of single men in that category who are not working as they once did. Women, by the way, the labor force participation is at a record. It's at 78%, which is the highest on record right now. So it's not a women problem. You can talk about youth. The labor force participation for youth is lower than it has been in the past, and some of that is I think, a problem, but it's also staying in school longer. And then people who are elderly are also, chipping in, I think, at historic rates. But somehow a lot of it used to be that everyone at that age for a man was in the workforce, and now apparently 11% are not. And I don't really know why. It seems like there are a couple of causes, and the person that I linked to here is David Bonson, who's an excellent podcaster. He's got a lot of interesting insights on this and other topics. Wrote a book on it. He went back and looked at the disability, the way that the government defines disability, where you can apply for disability and get disability. And there's almost a perfect correlation between the drop in labor force participation and the increase in these disability benefits. So it's just a lot easier. And most of that is not when I say disability, I don't just mean, hey, you lost a leg. It's a lot of mental disability, mental health disability. And so it's a lot easier to apply for and get a little bit of a social benefit, and I guess not go back to work if you have some kind of a recognized mental disorder or a mental health problem. And so that has made it easier for people not to work. And I think that is having consequences on how motivated the workforce is. I guess my cynical view would be, if you do, I get that there are lots of people who need help and who should be on a social disability program. But if the easier you make it to drop out of the workforce, the harder you make it to get back into the workforce. Like if you lose time in a job, the skills you need are changing. It's hard to get back in the workforce. And I think over now the 40 years, we just made it easier and easier, and probably too easy to drop out and not jump back in again. And so there's a whole class of people who are not showing up in the unemployment rate because they're essentially out of the workforce. They're not looking for a job now. They're not the right skills. They haven't been given the right skills. They don't have the right job experience now to get the jobs that need to get done. And that's creating a bigger and bigger problem of just people who are not in the workforce. So I think the question is correct, that the unemployment rate is a little bit of it's not great. It's not the only metric you should be looking at. I don't know that it's exactly a flawed metric, but it's one piece of the pie. It's like how many people are looking for a job versus everyone else. Turns out unemployment rate's super low, right? But the number of people working in the workforce is at a 50-year low right now. Labor force participation is at a 50-year low. We haven't been this low since the 1970s. So when you say the labor market is strong, I say, I'm not so sure it is. Just because there's low unemployment doesn't mean that everyone's working or everyone who should be working is working. And so I take it, I think what's going on is there's something to this social disability, the programs, the way they're designed. I also got kids in school, man, and I know what they learn. And I'm looking at what they're learning and studying in middle school and high school. And I'm like, man, these are not job skills that we need in this country. You guys are studying, and my kids will know more about, calculus than Galileo knew. They'll know how to code, like great. But in terms of like the job skills you need, a lot of this is social skills. It's like showing up at a job, learning to come in at 9 a.m., leave at 5 p.m., the work ethic, knowing what goes into your credit score, knowing how to run a lemonade stand. They don't get any of the stuff in high school here in Palo Alto. So I think a lot of the skills that they need are not being taught in school and prepared in school. I think that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah, I think I have a joke. I say child labor builds character. I was selling at the flea market at six years old, my grandmother on weekends and whatnot, and I learned a lot of sales skills. But we are running out of time. So first thing, Amon, thank you for joining. If y'all could go to Trading Places on YouTube and hit the subscribe button, that would be awesome. Also on Wednesday, my friend Azim, who works for Google's immigration team, will be joining us to talk about what's going on in the H-1B space. So if you want to ask him a question, go to patreon.com/SVIC, become a supporter, and then you can ask him a question. Thank you so much, Amon, for joining. Thank you, Joe. And we'll see you on Wednesday at noon. Talk to you later. Peace. Cool. Awesome.